We would like to welcome everyone to this event. Next slide.
All right, so this event, this Director Summit this year, the whole vision for this is to provide all of you as consortia leads, directors, or co-chairs a full week of training, really looking at your 3-year plan moving forward and how you reflected, how you created your plan, and now how you're going to implement your plan. Gary?
Thanks, Carolyn. In the 3-year planning process, consortia analyze various data points and the impact of their services over the previous 3-year period. You celebrated your success and evaluated where there were continuous improvement opportunities as the unmet goals you have set for yourself. In those areas of success, did you look to see how you could expand upon those successes? For those unmet goals, you looked at evaluating the reasons and did a reset. As always, we are asking you to reflect on an annual basis in preparation for your annual plan. But our overarching goal is to pivot away from a focus on process to a focus on program outcomes. That is why data is and will be so important to us, and how we chart a course to better serve our students. Next slide.
All right, so the 3-year planning process asked all of you in your consortia to create strategies and activities to meet the needs that were within your region. These needs included education and workforce. You all used LMI data to determine the workforce needs and evaluated your current offerings of CTE programs and other programs to decide if they were aligned, and if not, what changes you needed to make. Moreover, on an annual basis, you're being asked to create short-term 1-year strategies to meet the needs of your community for education and workforce. Implement. That is what this director's event is all about. How are you going to implement your plan? How are your outcomes going to help us as a state move this program forward and better serve our students? What support do you need from the CAEP office, from CAEP TAP to implement your plan? How does your budget align to your plan? Where can you ask agencies to use supplemental funds, such as WIOA or other LCFF, community college apportionment funds, to braid that funding together, even Perkins, don't forget your Perkins funding, even Perkins funding to help you implement your plan and what you've put into your budget. At the CAEP office, I love this thing about reflecting, right? Because we never take time to reflect. And at the CAEP office, it's really important that not only do you follow these 3 areas of reflect, create, and implement, but we also need to be doing that same. And we're working to model that activity at the CAEP office. As we move forward, we plan to include this idea of reflect, create, and implement into the annual planning process. Gary?
The role of the CAEP office is to create policies that allow us to quantitatively and qualitatively measure the impact upon adult learners from our instruction. That instruction should align where possible to the education code, but the code is permissive. These policies adopted by the CAEP office should support the work in the 71 consortia. The ability in California of the two systems to collaborate is critical to our success and our ultimate goal, which is to increase our impact upon adult learners, while our instruction and support systems encourage them to engage and succeed. The successful collaboration of the adult schools and the community colleges is the single factor setting California's adult education regional consortia and CAEP office apart from adult systems in other states. And the CAEP office always strives to reflect this example of our consortia in the important work that we do. Next slide. The CAEP office is charged with ensuring the education code is implemented while guiding our system and following the additional items outlined in legislation. We are watching to see if the governor will sign AB 1491, which will address carryover if signed. The CAEP office will be following that legislation and implementing the requirements. In addition to that legislation, the CAEP office is excited about the $130 million in healthcare funding, which can truly change the lives of students. Recent trailer bill language will ensure, of course, that there is field input. The CAEP office has plans to enhance the technical assistance offered by the TAP office by seeking a college with an outstanding non-credit program to partner with the Sacramento County Office of Education. Furthermore, we are exploring creation of a 10-member, 5 from the adult schools and 5 from community colleges, inclusive of data and research experts representing each system, a 10-member work group from outstanding leaders from the field to advise the CAEP office on various issues. Next slide.
Sorry, I muted myself. Now we'd like to open it up for any Q&A that you all might have. And I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing because really all you have here is our contact information. And the next slide does remind you how to ask for assistance. So have we gotten any Q&A in the chat?
Nothing as of yet, but if you have any questions, now is the time to definitely ask them. We do have Sarah Martinez. She asks, I'm curious about the healthcare funding. Has there been more direction?
As we indicated, there is supplemental language that Dr. Zachary and I have been discussing, but this is still a matter to be determined. As we indicated, we will look for some field input, but this is something under construction right now, and we're working together to address it.
All right, Sarah, I believe you have raised your hand. Do you want to come off mute? Okay, go ahead.
Just to clarify, is this the healthcare funding that is also in the governor's budget, the state chancellor's office budget, or is it separate?
No, this is that funding. Well, I don't know, Gary, is there additional healthcare funding beyond the 130 in the chancellor's office for other items?
There is funding under apprenticeship that will look at similar kinds of programs. So as we indicated, as you look to programs that you can braid your funding with, apprenticeship from the Chancellor's office is something that LEAs should investigate and pursue.
Okay, and I see Melise has a question about the 1491 carryover funding and what the impact might be. And at this point, we're waiting for it to be signed. And then we'll be doing some deep diving into that and looking at how we have to do some planning with NOVA to provide some alerts for consortia so that they know when they're getting close to that carryover limit. And then there is a requirement, if it is still in that legislation, that there is some technical assistance provided to those consortia that are exceeding that carryover amount. So we'll be looking into that as the CAEP office. Thank you for that question, though. Other questions?
Now is the time.
Let's see, Kelly says, no, Chrissy says we received a survey regarding the healthcare funds. Was there a decision made from the answers, particularly whether to send it out as an RFA or utilize CAEP to send out the funding? I'm not sure where the survey came from.
No, I'm not either aware of any survey. As we indicated, Dr. Zachary and I are still working together on how the funding will be structured.
And if the trailer bill language comes through, it does say in that trailer bill language, it calls it a solicitation, which would be an RFA in education terms. So it does say that in the legislation. But Chrissy, I'm a little more interested in where you got the survey and who that came from.
Hi, Carolyn. You know what? I don't recall, but it was, I know I received it, and the Dean of Career Ed over at Santa Ana College also received it. It was a couple of months ago, but it was, would you like to just use the way that CAEP is allocated to send out the funds was one of the questions. And I had not ever seen that before with new funds coming through. Have any of the other directors or received that particular survey?
I think that was something that was extended to non-credit programs by
maybe ACE?
Yes. And so I think that they were looking for just what the field was thinking and trying to take that input. But it wasn't from the CAEP office. It wasn't anything official.
Just a thought process. Okay.
It's just I think soliciting what the field might be thinking. But as Dr. Zachary indicated, nothing yet from the CAEP office. We're still awaiting action by the governor's office, and we are still deliberating on how to structure the funding. As Dr. Zachary indicated, we're sort of leaning toward an RFA because of a variety of reasons. But again, this has not been decided.
Right, and so Kelly, in looking at your statement, I'm not sure if it's a question, in terms of planning supports, tools and examples of how we collaboratively track implementation of strategies. We are playing with Google Docs to track, using a tool that K-12 partner uses to track LCF goals. Kelly, is that a question or just sort of sharing out what you're doing?
It was kind of a question, just kind of responding to what you were saying in terms of our focus for the year and the annual plans is, you know, we have a lot of strategies, and so, and it involves so many different players because, you know, we're big institution, a large member agency. So maybe just like a support, like in terms of support from TAP, like different ways that we can track, you know, how we're moving on our implementation of things. So I'm looking more like kind of like a little bit roll your sleeve up, like what are ways that we can have collaborative ways of tracking things. So like tools that we could use.
You know, I think that's a great task or something for the CAEP TAP office to be looking at and seeing what's out there, because they really know a lot of the technology and some of the tools that are available. So I'm looking to Veronica to kind of put that down on a list.
I have it. Thank you.
Thanks, Veronica.
Mhm.
All right, so Emma asks, with respect to 1491, just for clarity, we are currently developing our budget and work plan, and since the fiscal management guide indicates the 15% spent per quarter, with 40% carryover being allowed, should we continue this and make an adjustment mid-year once a new fiscal management guide is released? Yeah, I would say that would probably be the only way to go, Emma, because we have to wait to see if the governor is going to sign that legislation. My thought would be that the CAEP office, as soon as he signs that legislation, would be working to provide guidance to the field on how to work with your budget and put that into NOVA. Emma says, thank you. Do you see any other questions in there?
Yeah, so Janae had posted the letter that was sent from, I think it was CCAE and CAEP. And so she was wondering if there was any feedback from the chancellor's office regarding that particular letter that went out about the coordination of CAEP.
I think that was something internal. And again, I'm going to restate, and I think Dr. Zachary would agree with me, that collaboration between the two offices is extremely important. That doesn't mean that we don't disagree. And as we have issues that come up, we seek to resolve them in a collaborative and compromise way. That's the perspective of the chancellor's office. Dr. Zachary?
I would agree that we're striving to work collaboratively, just as all of the ed code is asking for us to do. I mean, I can't answer specifically that question about the letter from the chancellor's office response. So Veronica, are there other questions?
Yes, so Kelly says the other areas pre-apprenticeship and what other consortia and member agencies are doing. this would be a good support / community of practice. We would be interested in maybe a topic at the summit. So definitely, Kelly, and then also the next session, the reader session, that's also an opportunity for you within your group and other groups to discuss topics such as those. And then we're going to utilize the feedback that you all provide in terms of I think there are 5 questions that you'll be answering. We'll use that feedback to further explore training opportunities, PD sessions at the summit, so on and so forth. So we are looking forward to those rich discussions and you all having those discussions, and then we'll see the best ways in which we can support.
So the Chancellor's Office will be offering a significant amount of funding under apprenticeship and pre-apprenticeship programs. I think it's up to 40 million. And our sister agencies, the Division of Apprenticeship Standards, has in this FY 22-23 budget received a significant amount of funding, 175 million for apprenticeship programs in general. And we're still working collaboratively, including the California Department of Education as agencies on how that will be structured. There is also a $40 million grant offering for women in construction. In apprenticeship, women traditionally have been grossly underrepresented in the building trades. And so we're trying to make a significant investment as a state to ensure more equitable representation in our traditional apprenticeship programs. In addition to that, we'll be offering the RSI funding, and there's the apportionment, as Dr. Zachary mentioned.
Yeah, in addition to that, there is some apprenticeship funding that CDE has received, as well as California is part of a consortia looking at registered apprenticeships. So we're part of a community of practice that the California Workforce Association is organizing, and both Gary and I attend those meetings, and that is to look at expanding registered apprenticeships throughout the state. Specifically at the CDE, we have our arts, media, and entertainment industry sector lead is very focused on registered apprenticeships in the entertainment business, looking at not the entertainers, but all of the backstage and support staff. She has amazing partners on her advisory, and we're working with LAUSD to implement some of those in with their arts, media, and entertainment. And some of those apprenticeships, they are registered apprenticeships, and some of those require that students be 18 and older. Therefore, they're working with their CTE programs that are part of their adult ed in LAUSD. Because as you know, many registered apprenticeships, you do have to be 18 to participate in that work.
And as Dr. Zachary is indicating, all of our programs are targeted to increase registered apprenticeship. The governor had a goal by 2030 of 500,000 apprentices. We are at a little over 100,000. So it's a stretch goal that all the agencies are collaboratively looking at. but we're looking at registered apprentices in our programs. Dr. Zachary points out a very interesting subject, and that is the youth apprenticeship bill that was just, or funding that was just provided, and that's the 175 million I referenced, does define youth apprentice as a 16 to 24. That creates issues because as Dr. Zachary indicates, the 16 to 18 is a different consideration entirely. And so we're looking at that as interagency work to see how that might be structured. But again, we're focused on registered apprentices and driving toward the governor's goal.
Veronica, other questions?
Yes, there are. So Yulene asks, with the implementation of the carryover bill for 23-24, will there be guidance on how individual consortia handle their previous allocations that are using funds 1 year in arrears?
Yes.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Okay, and then Sarah says, to expand on Kelly's thought question, our consortium has challenges tracking students between the adult schools and colleges. The adult school looked at a third-party vendor to support this, but it didn't work out. I'm curious what systems other consortia are using. And then Kelly has followed up and said that their consortium, Kelly Haglin has followed up and said that their consortium has an MOU for data sharing on a secured site where we upload and compile the information. And then Melise asks, what is the name of the grant for women in construction?
I'm sorry, Veronica, could you repeat the question?
Okay, so the question is, what is the name of the grant for women in construction?
I can get that for you, and we'll have Veronica send that out to everyone. What we'll do is we'll summarize all of that funding that I referenced, and then the TAP office will send that out to everyone. Good question.
All right, and then it looks like Madeline had to go, but she thanks us for this session and these updates. And Eileen asks, is the funds for out of school youth?
So I know that Title I, Title I specifically has funding for out of school youth. And I would recommend that you partner and connect with your local workforce development board for those funds, because what we hear is that they often have a hard time spending those funds. So please connect with those local boards so you can be part of those funds. And at the federal level for WIO Title I, out of school youth is the same age range as Gary mentioned with the youth apprenticeship program, so 16 to 24. Of course, in California, when we're talking about out of school youth, we're really focusing on those 18 years and above because of compensatory education up to age 18 or until you graduate from high school.
And then I would also add to what Dr. Zachary said, keep an eye out for this youth apprenticeship funding, and we'll send out a summary of that funding. Other questions?
Well, if there aren't any additional questions, I think, Gary, we're done a little early, which I think will give Neil and Myra a little more time.
Yes, yes. Thank you, everyone. On behalf of Dr. Zachary and myself, we've enjoyed this session. Dr. Zachary?
Yes, I have enjoyed. I appreciate all of the questions. That helps us to know where your focus is. So we will be working on that guidance as soon as the governor, assuming he signs 1491, we'll be working on that guidance, and obviously you'll be getting information for that and the healthcare funding. And I wish you all the best for the rest of your week in the summit.
All right, thank you both for the session and these updates, and thank you all very much for participating. So our next session does start at 9:30, and that is the 3-year plan reader session. And in that session, we will be breaking out into regional groups based on your consortium and where you are in the state. And you'll be working on it, not only examining your plans, but also working through a series of discussion questions. And so we'll have all of the materials that have been uploaded to Canvas. We'll provide a link for you all, including the discussion questions, your group assignments, so on and so forth. So you'll have all of the materials that you need. And our facilitators, which is Neil Kelly and Myra Diaz of the CAP office, they will be on hand to facilitate and guide you through that particular session. And throughout the rest of the week, if you haven't had the opportunity to, please register for our other sessions. And so naturally, the natural progression after you've examined a 3-year plan and you all have submitted your annual plan is to now set goals for implementation of your annual plan, your 3-year plan. So that'll be tomorrow's session. And then we'll have 2 different sessions with Casas and Wested that will be talking about the 3-year plan implementation as it relates to program evaluation. So you can expect to see that. And then I know that there are some new consortium leads and directors who are on the call today. So welcome to CAEP. And we also have a day long of training for you all on Thursday, which is our CAEP new consortia lead onboard training. And so during that training, you'll see Carolyn and Gary again. They'll be talking about the CAP program as a whole. And then we'll have Myra and Neil talking about program guidance. And we will have our program teams, Casas and Wested on hand. I will be facilitating a session on NOVA, and then we'll have our Outreach and Technical Assistance Network, or OTAN, available for you all to talk about technology integration. So we have a host of sessions. We have a host of sessions this week we'll be going through. So again, we'll get started at 9:30 this morning with our next session, and then we'll carry through 12:30 p.m.
Veronica, this is Neil.
Go ahead, Neil.
Is there any way we can open up that room a little early, since we do have about 20 minutes?
Sure, we definitely can. We'll close this Zoom room. The next session does have its own Zoom link. And so you all have received that link, and we can go ahead and post that in the chat as well. And then we will go over to the next session.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. All right, so we'll go ahead and close this room, and then we'll go to the next session. All right, thank you. I will.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you,
Welcome,
Veronica.
Gary. Yep. Thank you, Veronica, and the TAP office.
Yes, absolutely.